Now, all right, welcome everybody. We are investigating this magnificent piece from the Sulam Rabbi Yehuda Leib Ashlag in his introduction to the Talmud of the 10 Sfirot. That we are actually almost on like a new topic, but we're investigating really the Torah. Everything is about what is the Torah and what is the wisdom of Kabbalah, okay? So thank God, I think we started off last time on page, I believe it was page 191, paragraph 142, right? After he got through explaining, some things about the Torah and what the Torah is, and we got to investigate the concept of a primordial Torah, which was this basically, as my father-in-law, may his merit protect us, an alphabet soup of energies of letters in the sky. The letters are very profound, as we know. And then after he got to explain all of that, right, that the Torah has this unbelievable energy and information in it to elevate us, and now he's getting into the idea to explain what is the wisdom of Kabbalah, so we can understand it in a way that is reliable and we don't get confused by it, okay? That is basically where he left off last time. That was paragraph 142. And the last thing you should know, you just in that last part of the paragraph of 142, he says you should know that the Holy Torah has 4 aspects. We have to really get into this. 4 bechinot. The Torah itself, we have to understand. Take a step back. The Torah, we always say, is the blueprint of creation. And when we say blueprint of creation, that means God looked into the Torah and made creation. Very much like an architect will have blueprints to a building. Except it's really not like that. And we've discussed this before. It's not so much like that as an architect has the blueprints. Once he makes the building, the blueprints get folded up and put away, but it's not that now. Our Torah is much more dynamic, as we're going to see. That really, the way that I've heard it explained to me by one Kabbalist, which was, picture this. You have a movie screen, you'll have the projector, and then you'll have the film, right? Rabbi Akiva Tatz, I heard this from Rabbi Akiva Tatz. You have the movie screen, you have the projector, and you have the film. And what happens is the light from the projector goes through the film and projects onto the screen. So basically, every single thing that we are experiencing has a root in the Torah. The Torah is the blueprint of creation. That means if you sing it, if you experience it, it must have a root in the Torah somewhere. And the way that it's looked at as, actually, it's pretty dynamic. When you think about it, it's almost like a cosmic projection. We are all cosmic projections, okay? But it's the way that it's saying is that the Torah has 4 aspects, meaning there's 4 manners of this cosmic projection. There's 4 ways that it's expressed. And he divides it into, the first 3 are called worlds, year, and soul, or what we call in Hebrew, olam, shana, and nefesh. This is brought in the very first paragraph, the very first Mishnah of the oldest book in Sefer Yetzirah. We discussed a little bit about this last week. So basically what we have, world, year, and soul, we have basically what we call space, time, and consciousness. Okay? Space, now they're using, in the quantum physics, they're calling it space-time, because they're kind of warped it or into one kind of thing. Now, any of y'all want to chime in and help me out with this, because I'm not saying I got it, okay? We're just kind of like trying to grasp it to the level that we can. But of course, in the Torah itself, since the Torah is the blueprint in a way, a manner of projecting onto the film screen. The screen is the world, And then there's the light, which is, we'll call that the light of God. And then the Torah, which is the film, basically is projecting everything onto the screen. The screen doesn't exist without the film. Okay, it's kind of like not exactly this kind of parable. But that's basically how we have to understand reality. It's an unbelievable idea that you are being projected every single moment when you think about it, from God's mind. Okay, we're being willed from God's dream, our existence and the existence of everything every single moment. So it's not like a plan, like the architect has the plans to the building that you fold up and put away once the building is made. It's actually being projected every single moment in every single one of our experiences, as he's going to get into. So we have here, the Torah has 4 aspects: space, time, consciousness, and the 4th aspect is the many ways in which the first 3 combine themselves in the different circumstances. Okay? So you can look at it in a certain way as, let's say, like time has an expression. Time expression is Shabbat, is a great time expression. It's very unique. Okay? It doesn't have much of a space expression, kind of, except for you're limited to where you can go. But then there's, of course, the idea of space having its projection, the universe, and places where you can go. And consciousness, of course, is your experience of those. So everything is going to be different and based upon what is going to be more, less combinations. Now, I'm not saying I got this down, but seems to be what he's saying here. So these are the 4 aspects of the Torah being projected. So now he's going to go into paragraph 143. There's something called in the external aspects, and then there's what's going to be the internal parts of these 4 aspects. The outmost aspect of reality comprises the sky and the land masses, the earth and the waters and so on, which the Holy Torah calls world. Okay? So in other words, every single thing that we see in the outer existence of things, that's called space. Then there's an inner aspect. The inner aspect of this reality comprises man, the animals, the birds, and the beasts, according to their species, which are mentioned in the Torah. All of these are called soul. Okay? It's kind of strange when you think about it, but we do know that everything does have a consciousness to it. Even the rocks have a consciousness. Everything has a vibration. Okay? It's interesting when I thought about this, is why would he call the beasts according to their species, the animals, the birds, they're called nefesh. They do have a life aspect to them. But really the idea here is going to be our experience of those. Okay? Our level of consciousness when we do experience the bird, right, Melissa? Or when we experience whatever it is out there. Is it an experience of an animal? It's an aspect of nefesh. Now this is an interesting idea. I have to go a little bit deeper on this. Okay? Why are those called aspect of nefesh? So there's a great Torah that we have handed down from the Baal Shem Tov, a blessed memory. That his main Talmud, Rabbi Yaakov Yosef of Polonia, brings down an amazing thing. And we've discussed this in class a few years back. That really all of those things that we experience are extensions of our soul. And as we know that in our soul basically has 5 levels to it. We have what we call the lowest level, a nefesh. Then you have a little higher level, which is called ruach. And then you'll have a higher level, which is called neshama. And then you'll have 2 higher levels called chaya and yechida. So the lower aspects, actually, of nefesh, ruach, and neshama, which basically have an anchor in our body, they have extensions into our experience of people and animals around us. For example, a person's animals, if he has pets, they are called, or objects, your car, house, the pen you use, are expressions or outgrowths of your lower part of your soul called nefesh. They are your nefesh. Now the Baal Shem Tov does go to the next level. It says, if you got a problem with your appliances, like me, okay, that means it's a reflection of your nefesh, the lower part of your soul, okay? And then, so even if you got a problem with your animals or pets, right? So that's a reflection, an expression, an outgrowth of your nefesh, the lower part of your soul. Now the next level of the soul is called Ruach. It's called spirit. That, for the relation to the man, is the expression of a person's wife, his spouse, also friends, and the big part was even your enemies. That's right, your enemies are your Ruach. The enemies are an expression of the next level of your soul called Ruach, right? So if you got a problem with your friends and they become enemies, or you got an enemy, or your wife, it's a reflection of something that needs to be fixed in your Ruach, which really has to do mostly with speech. Ruach with speech, Nefesh has to do with actions, and then of course the next level, which is Neshama. Neshama, who is the outgrowth of Neshama? Who is the expression of your Neshama? Your children. Your children are your Neshama. So if a person has a problem with his kids, that means it's a reflection of your thoughts. Meaning your thoughts need some fine-tuning. Let's be nice. Okay? So the idea really here is, in terms of every single thing that's being projected through the Torah, in the animal realm that you experience, are called nefesh. It's a loose term, but really it means soul or consciousness. Okay? And then there's what we call the third category, called Shana. The third category, all causal factors mentioned in the Torah, in the sense of cause and effect, siba u'mesubav. As for example, we call it the hishtalshalut in Hebrew. Hishtalshalut is shalshelet, like a chain of events. We see that one event comes the other, causes the other, and causes the other. For example, the chain of generations from Adam until Yeshua and Caleb. It's interesting how he picks those. Who entered the promised land. Those are called year or time. He calls it year. Now, we can get into this, and it's meditative, and if you can contemplate it and you got a better understanding than me, please don't hesitate to share. I'm not saying I got it. We're just trying to piece these things together. But basically it has to do with a time kind of thing. Okay? I can understand. Here he gives an explanation. The Father representing the cause, and the Son represents the effect. The causal aspect of reality is called year. Now, it's time. Interesting how time is a cause. Sometimes not. But it's interesting if you look at the Hebrew word for, at least the way they call it here, Shana. Shana has other definitions. Shana is like Rosh Hashanah. You've heard that before. We're coming to Rosh Hashanah now, the new year. Okay? But Shana also has other definitions. Shana, which means change, cycle. Okay? So Shana could mean like a change. Something is mishtaneh. Something changes. Or it's secular, right? It's like Mishnah is meant to be like gone over, repetitious. Something of a, it's interesting how you think of cause and effect, and yet it also bleeds into the concept of something which is like repetitious, but it also means change, okay? Or cycle. Whatever it is, it's a fluid kind of thing, which one thing will lead to another, to lead to another. So far we've got those three, okay? The causal aspect of reality is called year, okay? So in other words, the Torah, which is the projection of this film into our experience, has three types of expression. It has what we'll call space, then we'll have consciousness, and then what we'll have time. Now, I don't necessarily quite have the inner outer that he describes in this paragraph. In a certain sense, you can see it's on the screen, is kind of the outer. And then the inner, your consciousness is kind of viewing it. the dynamic part is this part called soul, nefesh, is also involved somewhat in the projection itself, okay? So it's like we're viewing the projection and we're kind of in the projection, okay? It's kind of like different than you sitting at a movie theater seeing the screen and you're kind of like out of all of these three dynamics, as opposed to our existence, we're in it, okay? Kind of like you're in the role, you're in the movie, okay? It's kind of dynamic because we're all players here and free choice is given. And how do you want to play your role? You got a role to play. Everybody's got a role to play. How are you going to choose to play your role? Okay? So the idea here is don't consider yourself as like, outside of the movie. You are in it. And your choices have a dynamic effect on every single thing that's going on. Okay? Kind of bizarre when we think about it. Okay? So here, going on the last sentence here, all the various ways in which both the outer, that's the world, the screen, and the inner aspects of reality function and combine that are discussed in the Torah are called the existence of reality. We'll call it the Metziut. Okay? Kiyum HaMetziut. The existence of Metziut. Metziut means Metziut, kind of like is matzah, or bring out, or we'll call it expression. Okay? The existence of what we'll call reality. Okay? All right, so that's step one. Okay? We're introduced to the concept of a projection. Okay? And we're understanding that the Torah has 4 different projections, right? As we know, space, time, consciousness, and the combination. Now we're going on to paragraph 144 on page 192. Now, here we get into the basic stuff, which we've all gone over before, but here's a little different step in understanding how we can understand the 4 worlds that is brought down in the study of Kabbalah. As he begins, you should know that in Kabbalah, the 4 worlds are called, and you got to know this, if I wake you up at 3 a.m. in the morning, quick, what are the 4 worlds, right? Hatzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Yetzirah, okay? So you have to know those. Atzilut, and I'll translate what that means. It means 2 different definitions. One is called nearness, and classically, they'll define it as emanation, like that which is emanated. Atzilut. Okay? Kind of fits in with the projector model, Atzilut. But Atzilut is also the word Exile. If this, Hu Exile ha menorah, which means he is next to the menorah, right? Meaning he's near. Why is it called near? Because it is the nearest of the 4 worlds of the infinite. Okay? The closest to the Ein Sof. So it's called Atzilut. The next world is called the Bria. Bria, which means creation. It also has another nickname I'll throw in there, the world of the throne. It is where all of our souls were honed from. Bria, which means creation. It's novel, okay? It is the place where actually the separation actually of us to the Ein Sof begins, okay? Like I said, hone from the throne of glory. By the way, don't ever, whatever you're ever asked, where do you come from? You don't say San Antonio. You don't say Houston. No, not anymore. Where do you come from? You go, throne of glory. It's always it. You know that, right? Throne of glory. T-O-G. We're going to make some shirts, right? Me and Brian Miller. T-O-G. I come from the throne of glory. Okay? You got to know where you come from, right? That's Pirkei Avos. All right, chapters of the Father. Bria, that's the second world called creation. The third world, the next world is called Yetzirah. That means formation. That is really the realm of the angels. And then there's finally our world down here called Asiya, which means making. Okay, so just you have a definition of what these 4 layers are, or 4 worlds, or 4 dimensions. Okay? We'll get a little bit more about this in a few minutes. But here I've got this little chart here that I made just so handy for you. And if I can go ahead and send this all to you, pretty cool. Let's look at the top here. It's called the Ein Sof. That means the unlimited, isness. Okay? Now, in order to make our creation and to have us little dangling things over here, doing all our stuff down here, how he has to withdraw himself. He already withdrew himself from a certain point of existence, but he's got to go ahead and put himself back in to go ahead and animate stuff down here. But he needs like filters. We'll call it filters, okay? This dimension, the highest, called Atzilut, is the highest of the filters. Too bright for us to take. We can't exist on there. Bria is a little bit more filtration. Yetzirah, a little bit more filtration. And finally this world where everything is just lock solid, just dark matter. Okay? Welcome to the realm of dark matter. Okay? Where we just don't even see God, barely get a sense of him unless we crawl our way out of existence. Okay? Chisel, pray, right? So, and here, by the way, just want to give you this idea here. So here's like the projection from the Ein Sof. He's going to project from here his will, his ratzon, the goodness that he wants to give is going to be projected through all 4 worlds. Okay, so. Like we want to go like the projection's going to come from the Ein Sof and it gets projected onto the screen of reality that we have down here, which is the most concealment. So we're going from least concealment and degradation into the most concealment down here. Okay? Another way that they also will describe this, okay? Because the idea here is we all want to see God. We want to see God all the time. Right? And, of course, we're in a position now where we can't. So the way that it's also described is because of the idea, the concept of good and bad. Let's look at it like that. And he does talk about that later, good and bad. So here is all good at Atzilut. If you're in the perception of the consciousness level of Atzilut, which Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was on, and many sages of Israel, there was nothing bad. Nachum Ish Gamzu. There was this guy. He existed. He was the Rebbe of Rabbi Akiva. Nachum Ish Gamzu. Every single thing that happened, they're taking him to get his head chopped off because he brought some dirt to the Roman king. It's a long story, but they're taking him away to get killed, and he's going Gamzu Tova. This is so exciting, right? As he's going to get decapitated. Right? Until a miracle happened, of course, because he's just totally used to these kind of situations, where Eliyahu came down and he whispered into the Roman king's ear. You might be familiar with the story. And he says, this is not any dirt, Your Majesty. This is special dirt that Avram Avinu used when he fought against the war of the 4 and 5 kings. He would take this dirt. Basically, Israel, he was the ambassador of Israel, presented the Roman Caesar with a chest. They opened up the chest, there's dirt. Don't ask me how it's dirt in there. It wasn't planned. Some guys ripped him off in the hotel he was staying at, and they put dirt in the box, and they took out the jewels. Well, in any case, what happened was, it's dirt, and Elijah the prophet says it's not just any dirt. Avram Avinu fought these 4 kings. He would throw the dirt, and all the dirt would become arrows and spears and decimate the enemy. So the Roman king says, we have a campaign going on in this certain place. We haven't been able to get them. Let's check it out. So they checked it out, and it worked. The king was very impressed, very happy. Okay, not so happy for the enemy army, but it worked. He was very happy. Nachum Ish Gamzu got saved. In any case, every single thing in this concept, in this realm of existence, there can be no bad. Can't be. Just can't. Here is a mixture. Okay? We call it chetzi, half, right? Right? So it's half bad, half good. No, here, is mostly good, little bit of bad. Mostly good. Here's all good, mostly good, a little bit of bad. Here is half-half, half good, half bad. And here is mostly bad, very little good, right? So that's how the realms of these consciousness work in terms of a person's perception of how to perceive the light. Okay? So here we have the four worlds. These worlds emanate from one from the other. I'm continuing. And this is very important to know. Just as a seal embeds its impression in wax. It's a very basic concept in Kabbalistic wisdom in terms of what we call chotam nechtam. The stamp and then the seal of the stamp. Okay, the impression. Okay? Everything which is found in the seal is then found in the impression of the wax to which the seal was applied, without any feature being added or subtracted. Okay? In other words, just got to get the imagery of a seal and then the impression of the seal. As we know that every single thing in that wax, in that impression, is going to be in the seal itself, without no differences. It is the same for the unfolding of the worlds. All the four aspects of the world of Atzilut, meaning space, time, consciousness, and the blend. That is world, yield, soul, and their various combinations, which are called the existence of reality. All of these, Torah is existence, are transferred like a seal with its impression to the world of Bria, the next world down. In other words, look at it as here, there's a stamp, and the stamp comes and it makes an impression in Bria, and there you go. Every single thing that you'll see in this world will be only an impression of what was laid out in the stamp above. Okay? All four aspects of the world of Atzilut, that is world, yield, soul, and the various combinations which are in the existence of reality, are transferred like a seal with its impression to the world of Bria, and from there to the world of Yetzirah, and right down to Asiya. Okay? So we have here, we're introduced the concept of stamp and impression, and here has how it works: stamp, impression, right? And this one makes an impression, and basically an impression. So everything, basically what comes down here is every single thing that we're experiencing in this reality is nothing more than an impression. I've tried to jiggle you in the past many times with the famous parable of Plato and the men in the cave, who are looking their whole lives on shadows on a wall because they're chained to the wall. They're chained facing the wall, and there's a fire behind them casting shadows, and they think that is all of reality until you take one guy out of the chains and bring him out into the world, and he's like, oh my gosh, right? This is right? So he's, of course, after he stops freaking out, he can go and tell his buddies about, dude, there's a world out there, color, depth, right? Of course, these guys are too addicted to the shadows on the wall. Well, the idea here is we are all experiencing every single thing as being a projection or shadows on a wall. It's a little bit of a high-tech shadow, okay? But here he's introducing the idea of it's just an impression. Everything it's not really the real thing because it's not the stamp. It's just the impression of the stamp, okay? It's all impression, okay? A reshima, they call it, okay? So you always gotta just, red pill it for a second, okay? You gotta jostle what reality is not what you think it is, okay? It's all an impression of something higher, okay? Every single thing down here, and that's the most amazing thing, is all connected from way up here. Okay? Thus, as he goes on, all three types of reality that we experience in this world, which are called world, year, and soul, right? Space, time, and consciousness, together with all their combinations, are derived and come into this world from the world of Yetzirah, okay? And they, every single thing that's in the world of Yetzirah, if we could take a trip there, believe me, your soul has an existence there. You just don't feel it right now because we're wedged in a shoe right now, right? The lowest parts of our soul are wedged in a shoe, right? So we don't have, okay? So, but there's a whole, our existence in terms of the higher parts of our soul are in the world of Yetzirah, right? And so also with Bria, and also Atzilut, okay? Our souls are just, our bodies are just garments, okay? So thus all three aspects of reality that we experience in this world, which are called space, time, and consciousness, with the combinations of those, are derived and come into this world from the world of Yetzirah, that's the world of the angels. And they come into Yetzirah from the world above it, in such a way that the source of everything in this physical world is in the world of Atzilut, okay? There are other dimensions that are existing right here and now. And every single thing that is coming, the source, it's important, the source of everything in this physical world is actually in the world of Atzilut, but of course in a different way. Well, what does that have to do with us, Rabbi? Everything. Every brand new even brand new inventions, which never existed previously in the world, have their being first in the world of Atzilut, and from there they descend and are revealed to us in this world. Rabbi Nachman even goes to so far, he talked about it in Sichot Aran. Yeah, all inventions, it's not the guy thought of the invention. It was like time for this invention to come out. It was the time for this invention to come out and sent from the world of Atzilut, and they picked this guy, whatever it was, to pop it in his head, and he gets it, and he runs with it, and then all of a sudden you have the little hide-a-key finder, okay, or whatever invention, okay, cell phone. Cell phone wasn't invented by anybody. It was already pre-programmed in the world of Atzilut that made its way down here at the time that it needed to. By the way, the Zohar did predict that in the 6th millennium, which is what we're in right now, it used the whole idea of how Noah went into the ark when he was 600 years old. And they use there a whole interplay of expounding from the terminology of that is written in the Chumash, that relates to the 6th millennium, that there will be a flood. This is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai actually said in his book, the Zohar, written 2,000 years ago, that there would be a flood, another kind of flood, and it says it. There'll be another deluge, but a deluge of wisdom in the 6th millennium, and basically a flood from above, just like the flood of the waters of Noah that you can read about it in the narrative there. It was also from below, a flood from below and a flood from above, and they met. Okay, so the idea was, what does that mean, a flood of wisdom? This was predicted. I can show you the text when my lift comes, God willing. I might even have it in my files, that the flood from below was the flood of science. That will be this unbelievable flood coming from below, imagine coming from the aspects that people discovering what sand can do, because all of computers basically come from sand, right? Glass. So, and then of course the wisdom from above is, guess it? Kabbalah. The Kabbalistic wisdom will come from above, okay, which is what's happening now. That's why all of a sudden, why in the past, 30 years, 40 years, the wisdom of Kabbalah suddenly became so big, right? Madonna, red string, whatever it is, all of a sudden it became popular. How come all of a sudden, when it's been hidden for thousands of years, is it all of a sudden becoming so popular? right? It's because it's all part of the rectification of creation in terms of this flood. Okay, so everything in this world is a source really in the spiritual realms of the realm of Atzilut. It's very important for us to know this. I'm going to just interject here. Let me finish this paragraph. Even brand new inventions, which never existed previously in the world, have their being first in the world of Atzilut. That's the highest. And from there they descend and are revealed to us in this world. And this is what the sages taught. There is not a single blade of grass that does not have an angel and a guide above who beats it and tells it to grow. Have you ever heard that before? This means yes, this means no, right? Every blade of grass has a spiritual connection from the realms, from the cosmic realms. Interesting how it does use the term beat it. It's very interesting how it uses that term beats it. Gevura, concealment, okay? Smack, when you get a smack, what is that? Right? It's from the world of Atzilut telling you to grow, okay? And this other thing is, a man cannot even bang his finger in this world unless it has first been proclaimed above that he will do so, okay? In other words, when you're hammering or you stub your toe, ooh, it happened to me this week, right? So all that stuff, it's all about Emunah. God is totally orchestrating every single detail. Nothing happens by accident. It was first decided in the world above. It's known, Avram Avinu, he didn't move a finger unless it was the will of God. That's how connected our forefathers were, that they were so connected to the heavenly realms and those cosmic realms that they knew they wouldn't move unless it was the Ratzon, the will of God, okay? We're also in that, except our consciousness is not yet quite there. It's getting there, okay? But the idea here is that we're getting a sense of these cosmic realms, that every single thing is bleeding down into this world, and there's a connection, this projection coming from above, that until it's decided above, it ain't happening down here. But it's very important, like I told you before, in this cosmic projection, right, of the three aspects we'll call space, time, and consciousness, or soul, we're in it. We're not just viewing it from afar. We're involved in it, which means basically we have this great opportunity to be this co-creator, a co-creator of our own destiny, and a co-creator of the destiny of the world and mankind, based on our thoughts, based on our words, and based on our actions. We are involved in it, okay? So as much as we talk about in this paragraph how things are coming from above to below and everything is existing always in a places above from the hidden realm, by us just learning this stuff, I'm telling you, it's so deep. It's so profound, okay? Is that if you know that there's a realm called Atzilut, just the fact that you know it, and it goes even also into the kavanot of tefillah, the special intentions of our prayers, and you just think about the world of Atzilut, you are there. In other words, just even saying the word or thinking of Atzilut in your mind, you are actually pushing a button in Atzilut. We are pushing buttons all the time because we are strung up all the way up to here, okay? That's right, all the way up, okay? Okay, so in other words, when we learn these things, the Baal Shem Tov says, wherever your thoughts are, that is where you are, okay? If your thought is in the garbage can, that's where you are. Because we learned in last week's Parsha, here's a little side tidbit of last week's Parsha, if you learned, Shoftim v'shotrim titein lecha b'chol sha'arecha. The very first words of that Parsha was, judges and officers you shall place in all your gates, okay? This does not mean defund the police, okay? This is the opposite Hello. Judges and officers you shall place in all your gates. But of course, what is this talking about? Because it has to be the Torah, as the Baal Shem Tov always gets into. What is the relative meaning for it in the here and now for me? Okay? Because it has to have its existence in Nitzchi. It has to have its eternal expression. Where is the eternal expression for me now in judges and officers? So many Hasidic rabbis say, judges and officers you shall put in all your gates. They always go into the expounding concept of your gates are your eyes, your ears, your nose, and your mouth. Those are called the gates because it's the gates to your consciousness. Things are going in your eyes and in your ears and in your mouth and in your nose. Yes, that's right, in your nose all the time. And judges and officers is this kosher to be going in my ears right now? Is this kosher piece of gossip really, is it really true? That's a judge and then an officer, okay? Meaning like, no, it's not, and there's an officer, therefore it kicks it out, okay? Or should I be looking at this now? All right? Judge and officer. No, I shouldn't, right? So therefore you don't. Should I be smelling this now? You go to the Champs-Élysées in Paris, where the women are wearing the perfume. Sometimes you cannot smell those perfumes, okay? In the Champs-Élysées, okay? You have to be careful, right? And definitely in your mouth. Either what you put in your mouth, is it kosher? Or definitely what you're saying. Is it true what you're saying, right? Are there lies? Is it exaggerated? God forbid, Lashon Hara, or Rechilas, or anything of the sort. But then the Baal Shem Tov goes another level. See, in other words, that's just a way you can understand judges and officers in your gates is your head. And then there's another level of judges and officers in your gates. And the Baal Shem Tov goes in the level of consciousness, meaning your gates are your thoughts. They are the gates of your soul. In other words, the outer layer of your soul are your thoughts. That's why he says wherever your thoughts are, that's where you are. Because if your thoughts are wherever, the shopping mall or doing something, that's where your soul is, because that is your essence of who you are. This is such a dynamic rule about where you are, where your thoughts are. I mean, you just because you gotta know, you gotta ask yourself, where do I want to be right now? And so what I'm getting at here is, if your thoughts are in the realm of Atzilus, I don't know what that is, Rabbi. You don't have to know. I told you. If your thoughts are in the realm of Atzilut, or Bria, or Yetzirah, just mentioning that address, that is where you are. And when he goes, just to give you, just in terms of judges and officers in your gates, in your thoughts, really he says thought, love and fear, love and awe. In other words, every thought that you have in your mind has to be weighed. Is there love and fear going on here? Love and awe, meaning awe of God, or awe of God's creation. In other words, everything has to be weighed and balanced and considered in terms of your thoughts. Is there love or awe in it? Because if there ain't, it's out. Imagine that, okay? But just to give you the idea of what I'm saying is, as there's these cosmic realms that we are so connected to, and when you think about it, you have an influence even in those cosmic realms. Our words have a meaning in the cosmic realms, and our actions have an incredible effect in the cosmic realms. And then when you make an effect in the cosmic realms, from those cosmic realms, right, the hidden realms, bleeds back down into our realm. We affect every single thing in those realms as being in a projection, in terms of being a participant in the projection of existence. We are way more powerful than we think we are. We are way more dynamic than we think we are. And our thoughts, we have to retrain our thoughts, our thinking, our words for sure, and our actions, okay? Let's go just a little bit more. So you should know that the Torah is enclosed within these three aspects of reality: world, year, and soul, right? Space, time, and consciousness. Plus all their myriad combinations in this material world, because the Torah is still going on. The Torah is still being written because it's the blueprint of creation. It's still being projected. We're still doing our part here. Just because you didn't see it in the 5 books of Moses doesn't mean it's not there. You're there. There was once a story, this atheist came to the Ramban, Nachmanides, right? And whatever the conversation was, Nachmanides opened up the book in the Parsha of Hazina, which is the second to the last Parsha of the 5 books of Moses. And he read the guy's whole life. He said he's talked about his past, he talked about his present, and he read to the guy's future. Boom! Bam! He says it's all there. We just don't see it. Okay? It's all there. Let's go on here. Okay? It is from here that the matter of the forbidden and the unclean, which are spoken of in the revealed Torah, are derived. God is enclosed in this Torah, because God and the Torah are one. It's just a garment of God's projection. According to the principle of God and the Torah are one, albeit in great concealment and hiddenness. The material garments are the wings that cover and conceal him, may he be blessed. However, the enclothing of the Torah in the purer aspects of the world, year, and soul, meaning space, time, and consciousness, and their combinations as they manifest in the 3 higher worlds of Atzilut, Bria, and Yetzirah, appear in this world as the wisdom of Kabbalah. So here we have case in point. What is the wisdom of Kabbalah? How come it's so different than the Torah that we read when we read in the Chumash, in the 5 books of Moses, with all of the mitzvot, and Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Noah? Where does it fit in? So here we go. You remember this piece of paper I showed you, this diagram? That we have the projection of the Torah through all of these realms: Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Now here we have our Torah down here in the way that it is now, in the concealed part. It's storylines, it's the mitzvot: don't eat lobster, stay away from lobster, okay? So the idea here is these 3 realms, also there's a Torah there. They're all part of the same Torah, right? But if you want to talk about what is the wisdom of Kabbalah, it's the realm of the Torah in its purest form, in realm of Atzilut, Bria, and Yetzirah. Okay? That is where the projection aspect, that beef, that chunk, that experience of Torah in those realms, the Kabbalah, this is where it is on the map. Got it? Okay? So every single thing in time, space, and consciousness, when it has to do with the realms of Kabbalah, is dealing with this Torah. Not that they're not separate, as he's going to say right now. The wisdom of Kabbalah and that of the revealed Torah are actually one. It's all the same. It's just a concealment. However, when a person is in a state of consciousness, of concealment of God's face, then he or she finds that God is similarly concealed by the Torah. Okay? This is where it can become a drug of death, because a person can learn all of Shas and Poskim and still be a caveman, okay? In the dark, okay? Like all that Torah doesn't do really anything to your consciousness, because if you're just so involved in one cow goring another cow, right? And you're involved in the Prate Pratim, which is a Gavaltic, it's an amazing thing. We won't say no, but did you get to the point, okay? Under these circumstances, because it's so concealed, you have to start to unmask it. And believe me, I heard a class by Rabbi Moshe Weinberger. He was reading a letter from Rav Kook, right? Zecher Tzadik Livracha. That Rav Kook was admonishing all of the leaders of the generation because they're not making the Torah juicy enough. They didn't make it juicy, right? They didn't bring out the inner wisdom, right? a little bit here, a little bit there, right? But he was really getting you guys, you got to get the panemius, the inner part of the Torah out there. Because, what are you having? You're having people who are just, what's going on? It becomes a lifeless Torah. Under these circumstances, when a person studies the revealed Torah, he or she cannot receive the light of the Torah that pertains to Yetzirah, right? And one need not add, certainly not that which pertains to any higher level of Bria or Atzilut, right? Only when a person attains the consciousness of a revelation of God's face do they want to see God, right? Are they able, or do they use their mind and their perception to see God? Do the garments of the revealed Torah start to become more transparent, and the revealed Torah becomes one with the Torah of Yetzirah, which is the wisdom of the Kabbalah? In other words, you start to look at the Chumash or the external aspects in the Torah, and you start to see, whoa, there's bigger stuff going on there. Has any of you ever looked at the very first Mishnah of the Shas? The very first Mishnah of the entire Talmud Bavli has to do with reading the Shema. And it asks the question, when does one read the Shema in the evening? And then, of course, the answer isn't the direct answer, which is when 3 stars come out. It says, when the Kohanim are going in to eat their truma, when the priests go in to eat their consecrated food. That was a question answer. When do we read the Shema at night? Much deeper stuff going on there. Reading the Shema. What does it mean, read the Shema? Just give you a little bone here. Reading the Shema is experiencing the oneness of God. Every time you say the Shema, you have to be just totally into experiencing the oneness of all there is. The ultimate freedom, okay? God is all there is. That is what the Shema represents. In other words, when do we read the Shema at night? What does night represent? Night represents exile. All night, and all of the deeper wisdoms. Every time you have a day and night, right? Which is the Torah is about redemption, exile. Night always represents exile. Because why? We don't see exile. Exile of the mind. Okay? When does one say, when do we connect to the unity of God in exile? I'm giving you just like a little deeper meaning of what a simple question and answer of the very first line of the Babylonian Talmud. When the Kohanim go in to eat their truma. Kohanim, who are the Kohanim eating their truma? It means, this is going to startle you maybe a little bit. Kohanim represent the holy tzaddikim, the righteous people. When the righteous people go to eat their truma is their consecrated food, which means they leave this world and they go to their place in the Garden of Eden. When is the unity? And it's very apropos for us just to throw this at you. In other words, we're coming into this unbelievable state in exile where we're going to be experiencing the oneness of God. When does that happen? It happens when there are no more tzaddikim in this world. Meaning there's no more real big rabbis who bring it down. Okay? In other words, in an orphaned generation such as our generation, we are so orphaned, right? That we do not have anything like the rabbis that we had in the generations before, the Chazon Ish. I asked one guy, who was the last real Gadol? Right? And one guy said the Chazon Ish. Somebody said Moshe Feinstein. We don't really have anybody comparable these days. All of the Kohanim have entered to eat their truma. We are in exile. So in other words, buckle your seatbelts, Dorothy, right? Because Kansas is going bye-bye, okay? So let's finish this paragraph. Only when a person attains the consciousness of the revelation of God's face do the garments of the revealed Torah, which I just shared with you, start to become more transparent, and revealed Torah becomes one with the Torah of Yetzirah, which is the wisdom of the Kabbalah. So we're starting to understand the very first thing of the Talmud Bavli, of the Babylonian Talmud, speaks about an exile, when exile is going to end. Okay. As for one who attains the level of the Torah of Atzilut, the letters of the Torah are in no way changed. Okay. Once again, hooking up with the letters of the Torah, that is the energy. They are the primordial energy fields of creation. They are the same. It is just that these very same garments of the revealed Torah we have in our world have become transparent to the person and no longer conceal God. As it is written, and your teacher will no longer be covered by wings, meaning your teacher, meaning a God. The Ein Sof, the light of the Ein Sof, will no longer be covered by wings, and your eyes will see your teacher. Thus, that which is written in the Zohar, his life force, and his vessels, meaning the letters, are one. Meaning you'll be able to connect to God through the meditation of the letters. Once again, I think I've mentioned this last week. There's no other book where a 3-year-old child can love it and an 80-year-old genius can love it. As we know, the Vilna Gaon, the end of his life, all he did was study Chumash. He just studied Chumash because all of the learning in the Lamed Chumash, his connection to the letters and the combinations of the letters was so dynamic. It was so blissful. He was so full of awe and gleaning more and more insights from those very same letters and letter combinations. Okay? So here, what do we get today? We're understanding the Torah as the blueprint of creation, but not the classic blueprint. It is a projection. We are constantly being willed into existence through the Torah. As God looked into the blueprint and made creation, but it's not that kind of blueprint that where you put away. It's constantly being projected. We are part of this cosmic projection. And we understand what the Kabbalah is, right? When we understand the Torah of this world and the Torah of other realms, they are the same Torah, but it's more revealed, more pure in those forms. So in other words, the Torah of Kabbalah pertains to the Torah in these realms as opposed to the revealed Torah, which is in this realm. The idea here is to unmask those and loosen up the pshat, that understanding of what we have in our revealed, because there's a lot of questions you have when you look at the Torah. There's a lot of hidden parts we don't understand, right? I'm talking about like simple questions. Everybody's got hard questions. What is this thing about Amalek? How can God say for you to wipe out a whole nation? How can that possibly be? And then you have all kinds of questions. Like the biggest question was, how can the Torah, if you look in Parshat Mishpatim, deal with slavery? When you have a slave, he works for 6 years and goes a seventh. And then it went into when a man sells his woman to his daughter to be a servant. How can you have? When you go into the other realms, the higher realms, you're seeing it's talking about something completely different. Okay, in the more spiritual realm, in the realm of the soul. A man selling his daughter to be a maidservant, speaking really about God taking the soul and putting it in the body. The body becomes a maidservant. Okay, just to give you that, just not to leave you hanging. Okay. So that's just part one of what we're getting into in terms of the wisdom of the study of Kabbalah, in terms of the higher realms. Thank God we have all of the teachers who have already laid so much out for us in order to be able to understand and expound so much deep things in the Torah and what the Torah is. Any questions?